if you are PSLF, which is Public Service Loan Forgiveness, and you should lose your federal position, it does not mean that you will lose the 120 accrual credits that you've been working for. So maybe you're at, 80, and all of a sudden you lose your federal position. It does not mean you will lose the PSLF credits you have earned. Many people, unfortunately, think that the 120 PSLF credits, they think that those credits only apply if they stay in the same job, same employer, city, state, they can't move. Okay, and they have to stay there for 10 years. And if they should lose their job, either because they voluntarily quit or because there is a layoff, that means all of those credits are gone. Absolutely not. So let's make this very clear. And again, I am very familiar with PSLF. In fact, this channel used to be called Student Loan Chit-Chat. If that gives, new people any sense of comfort, I do know what I'm talking about. Okay. It is 120 credits accrued total at any time in your life. So maybe if you are one of those people that unfortunately has to go through the layoff and you're like, and I was 6 months just before I was going to get my 120 credits, those credits that you have hold. The unfortunate part is you're going to have to get another job somewhere, state, city, federal government job. Okay. You're going to have to get a job, get back into it, so you can complete those 6 months. So if there's any light at the end of the tunnel, please don't believe people. And I have read and I've seen questions like this. People incorrectly think that those 120 have to be at the same place all at one time. It absolutely does not have to be. As a teacher, if I wanted to be a teacher for 2 years and then I wanted to leave and I wanted to go work for the federal government, then I get laid off. I do another job that's not, under public service. Okay. So I'm not going to get any credit for those student loan payments that I made. But then, excuse me, but then let's say, a year and a half, 2 years later, I go back into a public service job. Your credits pick up in essence where you left off. So I hope that makes sense. Okay. So let's take a look here. I came up with 5 things that I think if you are PSLF, you need to do, and you should be doing this all the time. But let's face it, life moves on and we get busy. But those of you right now in these federal positions with the way things are going, I want you to make it an absolute priority to do it this weekend and start it on Monday. So here it is. No particular order. What I think, if I were in your position, okay, you need to do to secure yourself. Okay. Again, no particular order except for number 1. I'm going to give you the most important one first. Okay. The employer verification form. You need to get this updated with your employer. And actually, this even applies to people who don't work for the federal government, and maybe you work for a school. But we're kind of focusing on the federal government right now because this is where the biggest concern is, okay? You need to get your employer verification form updated ASAP. Like, I would like you to print it out this weekend, take it to your federal employer or HR, whomever it is that you have signing on the dotted line that you work there, you need to get it updated. People incorrectly think that you can only do the employer verification form once a year. No, you could actually do the employer verification form as much as you want. It's just your student loan provider requires that at least once a year you update it. So whether your federal job is on the line or not, without a doubt, I would get a new employer verification form printed out this weekend, take it to your employer on Monday, get it signed, get it updated, and get it to your student loan provider, whoever that federal provider is. It could be Mohila or some other company. Employer verification form is everything, because you also have to keep in mind that the department that you work for today, we don't know if it's going to be in existence tomorrow. And the other problem is that the people that hired you on, that manager, that HR department, whatever, who hired you on, may not be there tomorrow either. I mean, we hope they are, but if something happens, how are you going to get it verified? Employer verification form, get it updated. I don't care if you did it 5 months ago, do it again. Okay, second, you need to download all your work paychecks. We get lazy about this. I admit I get lazy about it. I've worked for the school district for 19 years. I don't think I've downloaded a single paycheck because we get used to just seeing it in our checking account. In reality, if you are a federal employee now more than ever, every single work paycheck you've done for that federal government while you've had student loans, you need to download it. Because remember, if something happens to your position, you are going to have to prove that the month you made the student loan payment, you were also a full-time federal employee. If you can only prove that you made the student loan payment, but you are unable to prove that at that same month you were also a federal employee, that month will not count towards public service loan forgiveness. Oh, let me sidetrack here for just a second before I go on to the third one. Before I forget, so I am sure some people out there are very concerned about you are on income-based payment, you have your federal job, you are at risk, or you may lose that federal position. Don't panic, because remember, you can still remain on income-based payment. Okay? The tricky part, however, is going to be that, as you know, when you are on income-based payment, it's not enough to reach into the principal and drop your student loan balance. So hopefully, okay, depending upon how high the bill is, all right, if you have intentions of going back into some sort of public service job, you need to keep this in mind, because you're going to be on income-based payment, and without a public service job to forgive that income, let me rephrase, without a public service job to forgive your full student loan balance, okay, and you just stay on income-based payment and you're in the private sector, that balance is only going to go up, 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 and it's never going to get paid off. So you need to kind of have an honest conversation with yourself. If you should get laid off from the federal government, are you wanting to go back into a public service job? And if you are, while you are on income-based payments, while you're looking for that job, okay, that's cool, because your plan is to get back into public service and get that student loan paid off through PSLF. But if you should get laid off from your federal job and you have a student loan that was on PSLF, but you have no intention of going back into the public sector and you stay on income-based payment, you're going to be one of those Dave Ramsey callers calling in, and I'll probably be doing a commentary on it saying, I lost my federal job in 2025, and 10 years later, my student loan balance has only gone up because I never went back into the public workforce where I could get PSLF. So you got to have a real honest conversation with yourself about how big is your student loan balance, and should you lose your federal job, are you planning on getting some other type of public service work to get your student loan forgiven? All right. But again, the silver lining in the sun, we're trying to find all the positive things we can, is even if you lose your federal job, it does not mean you are kicked off of income-based payment. You can still remain on income-based payment. It's just whether or not your student loan is going to be paid off down the road. That depends upon whether or not you ever choose to go back into public service. All right, so hopefully that all made sense. All right, so let's see. What I want you to do on Monday, as I said, point 1, employer verification. Point 2, download all your work paychecks. Point 3, I think I have 5 points total, but I reserve room to add in another point because you know how this channel works, family. Okay. Point 3, you need to go to your student loan servicer website, and I want you to make it a priority this weekend. Certainly by next weekend, I want you to download every single record about your PSLF. And you may go, but they've already got it. Well, here's the problem. We know right now with all the federal changes going on, departments are downsizing. I'm willing to bet, if I were a betting person, I don't know how long Mohila is going to be in charge of student loan accounts. And there is a very good chance that down the road, Mohila gets kicked off of managing the federal PSLF accounts and it goes to somebody else. And lo and behold, and I know some of you can relate to this, you call in one day to say, well, I had these records with Mohila, and when I went to Mohila, they couldn't find it anymore, or whomever your servicer is. Go into Mohila or whomever your current servicer is, and I just want you to spend an afternoon in front of SpongeBob or whatever, okay? And I want you to download every single payment record, as tedious as it is, mass download it, because I would not trust the federal government to say that Mohila is going to be your provider for very long. Yeah, I know they just started, but you know how the government works, right? So back those documents up. Next point 4, I want you to go into FASA, okay, FASA, and I want you to download every single letter you have ever been given from FASA about your student loan account. I don't care how big or small, important, unimportant that letter is, because what you need to do with the federal government going the way it is, okay, you need to create your own paper trail. Because let's just play devil's advocate. FASA, let's say a certain division of FASA gets totally kicked out. Because FASA it's federal government like anything else, Department of Education, all of this stuff. And all of a sudden, all those letters that said, yes, you had, 60 PSLF payments, and another letter said, you're down to now 50. And all of a sudden, those letters disappear. How are you going to document it? Go in, download everything with FASA, everything dealing with Department of Education. Basically, after 15 years of being in corporate, something I've learned is to cover your what. You have to create your own paper trail. Okay, this is the bottom line, and that's what I'm trying to get you to think about. Create this paper trail. Also, the 5th item, and I think there's one more after this, the 5th item is to upload all your paperwork to multiple accounts. Please, family, do not rely on that one single Google account to hold your life's work dealing with PSLF and your federal job and your paychecks and your W-2. Back it up into multiple accounts. And I even recommend backing it up under different companies. Like for me, I use Google and I also use Microsoft, 2 competing companies. I use different resources to upload this stuff. And the final thing I want you to remember before the light starts to go, nobody is going to look out for your PSLF interest more than you will. In other words, I had a conversation with a friend of mine not too long ago. In fact, I had multiple conversations with her, and I had to encourage her as to why it is so important that she take these steps, because in her mind, she was thinking that the government was keeping track of all of this. The student loan was keeping track of all of this. And wouldn't you know it, her account was actually in default. Yes. And she's like, well, I don't understand how come they didn't remove it from default. The government's not going to do squat with your PSLF unless you do something with it. So your PSLF could be one payment away, and it's just going to sit there one payment away until you actually decide to do something with it. In the middle of all these federal government layoffs, there's something that is not being discussed, in my opinion, enough, and that is the effect it's going to have on people who are federal workers, full-time, and are on the public service loan forgiveness for their student loan. You need to be in a full-time public service job, federal, state, city, or a qualifying nonprofit. You need to be in a full-time job the same month you make your student loan payment. Now, I know with all these severance and buyout offers that are going on, you need to consider if you are a public service loan forgiveness candidate. You may or may not, I don't know, you will have to decide between you and your loan service provider, your family budget. It may not behoove you to take an immediate severance pay, because once you are cut off from that federal job, your PSLF also stops. Again, this is not something I can advise you on, but it is something that you need to consider. And for all those private sector workers out there, I'm talking to some of you that are just cheering, okay, the fact that federal employees are losing their jobs, like the private sector has typically dealt with layoffs. And I've spent 15 years in the private sector, and I'm in my 19th year as a public school teacher. And you're celebrating that. I think something that a lot of private sector employees don't understand is that many federal employees are highly skilled, highly educated people. They're also used to working for less money than what the private sector is used to working for. They're going to be coming after the same jobs a lot of the people in the private sector are going after. And I think many people are going to be surprised how incredibly stiff that competition is going to be. Because in many ways, for comedy purposes, people will associate federal employees with people who work for government jobs, kind of like the front line, maybe lower level employees. You're not seeing the employees in the upper management, the executive level positions that come in with their 1-2 master degrees, possibly their doctorate, and they're doing the job behind the scenes that is not really under the scope of the public eye. So before we celebrate and sit there and go, great, it's about time the federal employees lost their jobs like the private sector has, we need to also remember those same federal employees are going to be coming after your private jobs. And I think some of you will be really surprised if you think the competition is stiff now in the private sector. Wait till highly qualified federal employees go after the same job, and they're also used to working for less money. Yes, federal employees can do the same job as the private sector, but they have typically been paid less. So just some things to think about.